So there were certain things that I noticed that felt off, and I've never lost that within myself, my ability to question things for clarity, because I wanted to make sense of the world. I also wanted to make sense of what happened to my people, because being in America, you feel like a natural born refugee born in that country. You feel like I'm not supposed to be here, but how could this have happened? I'm here. And who allowed this to happen? And why did they do this to my people? So it sets you on a path to try to understand others. So this is Conversations from a Very Pure Place. So just to preface the conversation again, I just want to explain we're covering the correlations between African Americans, Palestinians, and different indigenous groups, specifically for African Americans because it happens to be African American History Month. So what's the first correlation that we do have?
Ah! You're gonna jump! You're gonna stretch your limbs! Work your muscles! Keep it up until the drum stops! Jump! 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 Move! Move! Jump!
Very, very pretty. I've got some extra food for you. Grab her! But don't hurt her! No cuts or scars!
Tonight, a frenzy of violence at one of Jerusalem's holiest sites, threatening to ignite the region. Video showing Israeli riot police storming the Al-Aqsa Mosque, beating people inside with guns and nightsticks. Palestinians responding by shooting fireworks inside the religious compound. Police say they went in after extremists barricaded themselves inside overnight and stockpiled improvised weapons. But Palestinians say they were sleeping in the mosque as part of a Ramadan tradition. They attacked us inside there. All the young people inside are suffering, she says. Around 400 arrested and dozens injured, according to Palestinians.
مش قادر يدخلني، بقول له بس دخلني لحالي، بيجي 6 دقايق مش قادر يدخلني.
ليه؟
بقول لي لا روح من غير فيش تدخل، مع اني ست كبيره في ال70، شو بدي اعمل اسوي انا؟
وينك تروحي؟
بدي اصلي بس.
What do African Americans and Palestinians have in common? I'll give you the first example. For one, when someone comes to me and they ask me, do you condemn Hamas? I just look at them and I'm like, do you think I condemn my African ancestors for trying to free occupied African slaves? And they would just look at me and I'm like, yeah, I think you already have the answer for that. And they go, I get it. I get it. And so that's the truth of the matter is these people, Palestinians, they have a militia group. And it's a huge difference from a militia group that is just picking up scraps and things that they can find to defend themselves versus a military army. So Israel has a military army and they've been bombing people indiscriminately and bombing places where they're telling these people to migrate and go.
وقد نصره الله إذ أخرجه الذين كفروا ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا لا تحزن إن الله معنا لا تحزن إن الله معنا.
There was no confusion when supposedly they made claims against Russia during the Ukrainian invasion. But they only invaded Ukraine because NATO had came to their border, and that was a red line. And Russia has consistently asked for the end of NATO expansion. And they had an agreement in the West that they weren't going to expand NATO, which was broken in 1998 by Bill Clinton. So, and he was also having fun on Epstein's Island, but yeah, that's another topic for another day. But anyhow, back to the subject at hand. Yeah, there was no confusion regarding that, and people going, oh, it's complicated. It's complicated that, what's happening in Ukraine. So that's not complicated. There was a bunch of claims that were being made. All these celebrities and people and your corporate jobs are making you wear these little Ukraine badges and things, and you're donating. There was no confusion around that because there were some newscasters that would say terms like this.
Relatively civilized.
They look like any European family.
Christians, they're white.
This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
When they say, oh, civilized cities, and in another clip, well-dressed people, and this is not the third world, they really mean white people, don't they?
Now with the Russians marching in, it's changed the calculus entirely. Tens of thousands of people have tried to flee the city. There will be many more. People are hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
Now the unthinkable has happened to them. And this is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
As you're talking to us, Matthew, we're playing in the latest pictures of some of the refugees trying to get on trains or trying to get out of Ukraine. And what's compelling is just looking at them, the way they're dressed. These are prosperous, I'm looking to use the expression, these are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
These are not refugees from Syria. These are refugees from neighboring Ukraine. I mean, that, quite frankly, is part of it. These are Christians, they're white.
It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles.
Some of the media coverage of the conflict in Ukraine has been kind of off. We have reporters and pundits making some rather awful remarks about the nature of this conflict and these refugees versus, say, conflicts and refugees in the Middle East. First off, Europe has been home to some of the worst wars and worst war crimes in human history. I mean, the Holocaust. So why this surprise that bad things are happening in Europe? And second, when they say, oh, civilized cities, and in another clip, well-dressed people, and this is not the third world, they really mean white people, don't they? The reason they seem to want us to care more about Ukraine, and we should care about Ukraine, but not because they're white Europeans. That shouldn't be the reason we care about Ukraine.
Yeah, no, that's what's so disturbing in all of this. And in fact, not only that, it's trying to make an excuse why the West should get involved and embrace these refugees and help them. Listen, let's be clear. You should encourage and actually help refugees because they are fleeing a war. I don't know if you saw this. There was a op-ed today in the Telegraph. Well, I think we have it. We'll put it up for our viewers to see. This was an op-ed in which the writer, Daniel Hannon, said that these people, the Ukrainians, they're like us. They watch Netflix. They have Instagram accounts. They read uncensored newspaper, and then goes on to say that war is no longer something visited upon impoverished and remote population. Oh no, it's happening to us here in Europe. And to your point, you're absolutely correct. Europe has had some of the worst human rights abuses and atrocities and wars in not just modern history, in all of history.
Then come back, and now what's happening with Gaza, and we actually have 4K footage of children and families being blown to bits, and now the situation, it's complicated. It's too much. You don't know anything about it. You can't critique it because who are you? You aren't Palestinian, or you aren't Jewish. You're not allowed to comment on the matter, and that's false. If someone has a critique against African Americans, I'm open to listening to it because we all can learn from each other. A person doesn't have to be my ethnic group in order for them to be able to critique me as an African and share how they feel like I can improve my community or my society. And it's not a gendered situation. We're human. Everybody has a level of intellect and discourse that may be able to contribute. We're all supposed to exchange our personal development to make a better society. That's literally what people come together for and have long conversations about in life as adults. If you're a kid and you see your parents talking for 5 hours, they're discussing new routes to work or their new recipe or some sort of health elixir that they figured out. And that is what it means to be an adult. You're supposed to develop and you're supposed to enhance your intellect in exchange with people. And obviously, if you got children, be able to pass that on down to your kids. Ideally, if you're not, one of those people that don't have kids and they think their life is better because they get to be very selfish and degenerate. Living for things that are beyond yourself are very important. And people that don't, they don't have the ability to have these conversations because all they know is what they want. But life is bigger than you.
When we talk about Iwapile, but what are we talking about when we say Iwapile? We talk about internal and external harmony and balance. If we were using Omanela, and the Igbo Tao, we talk about internal and external harmony and balance. That's what you're trying to restore. That's what your philosophy should help you bring about, both in your character and the family character, then the community character. That's what you're trying to do. And that means to seek harmony with nature and cosmology, as well as humans and in your ecology. That's what the African thing is about. It's not about no crazy people. We've got medical books written in ancient Kemet where they're doing brain surgery, We're doing obstetrics. We're doing other kind, abdominal medicine, books written back then by black folks. So we're not new to science and technology. When we left Africa to come to the Western Hemisphere as enslaved, captured people, because we never agreed to slavery. We weren't a part of making any laws that said if you captured me, I'm a slave. Right. So I was never a slave. My ancestors was never a slave. That's in the mind of some other crook who stole me, who captured me, who stole my labor, who stole my wealth. I did not make any law that tell him if he captured me, I'm a slave. So why are we going to let him set the narrative that defined who we were? Because that's not who we were. We were Africans who had been falsely set upon. What happened to us was what they call human trafficking today. It was a criminal offense then. Under universal principles and law, it is a criminal offense now. But we're letting somebody rewrite history by claiming he could make a law that can govern me, and I had nothing to do with making the law. That's not the way the world works. At least not the African world. And so if you go back to the African ancient books, you will find every story in the Bible. And then you will find further along in that same story, using some of the same characters at a different time in history, you'll find the Cain and Abel story where the envious, jealous brother Cain would kill out of envy his brother Abel. So you will find that same story in the ancient African literature thousands of years earlier, where the brother Set would kill his brother Osiris out of envy and jealousy. Now there was never anybody named Set or anybody named Osiris, just like there was never anybody named Cain or never anybody named Abel. It is a story about envy and jealousy at any time in the consciousness of humanity demonstrating itself and manifesting itself, right? And so those are just a few of the things. You can go further and you can see stories like the Immaculate Conception. You know, matter of fact, the Ethiopian New Year, which is celebrated on the 11th of September, is all about the Immaculate Conception. But nobody really, even many Ethiopians no longer know what their holiday is really about. Okay? And the holiday is about the day when this woman resurrects her husband, which is the Lazarus story or the Jesus Easter story, and is animated by the real thing, the energy, the divinity. When this body, when this group of elements have spent itself, depleted itself, and broken down, what happens to the energy that is you? My grandmother was dying, and I went home. And my grandmother raised all of us. Even though my mother and father was in the house, my mother and father were more like brothers and sisters. My grandmother and grandfather, they were the bosses. And then I had my great-grandmother there, and she was even more of a boss. And so when Mama was dying, and Mama was a traditionalist, we call her root woman down in South Carolina. And so my mother called and said, if you want to see her, you need to come home quickly. So I jumped on a plane and I flew to South Carolina. And I got to her bedside. And she asked everybody to leave the room. So I said, oh Lord, what's going on now? And she told me, she said, James, she used to call me James. Because in a certain African language, you can't, the word J don't exist, so you don't pronounce it. So her J was a G. And she said, James, I want to go home. I said, well, Ma, you don't have to stay here. I thought she wanted to go back home to the house, you know. I said, I'll tell him now to take you home. You could die there. She said, oh, no, I don't want to go back there. She said, I want to go home. And then I got a little scared about it, but then I come out. She said, come take me up out of here. She told me to come and take that spirit out of my body. And let her go. I was so scared, I did not know. I just was short of wetting my pants when I went. I remember putting my two arms under her arms, pull her chest above, I slid her back up on the pillow. And she took a deep breath. And she was calm. She said, you could tell the others to come in now. And I did. And the next day I flew back to New York. And I called that morning. My sister, oh, after you left last night, Mama was sitting up there eating grits and catfish, and she was just having a good time talking about Pete and all of them. And while she's talking to me, Mama passed. We give that, sometimes we call it the ghost. That energy finds another being to reside in until it gets this new body. Or it could reside in your ecology because it's energy. You go back and merge with the greater force of energy in the total universe. But if you don't complete your journey because you're down here fooling around with all the negative and sliding and dodging, then you got to come back and repeat the process over and over until your time is done. The whites took from that the concept called purgatory. If you study your history, it'll make the rest of the world so simple. It just make it all so simple, you know. You ever been in love? Girls, yeah. In the African sense, love is not loving your body or loving your looks or loving your personality. Africans love the God in them, which they have spent their whole life cultivating, meaning those Africans who are in our senses, because we're out of our senses both at home and here, thanks to colonialism and slavery, but we're coming back. It is the God in me that seeks the God in you because I know the God in me and thus I can recognize the God in you. That's what love is about. They make us think love is about the shape of your hips, the contours of your face, the color of your clothing, the type of hairstyle, the smoothness of a personality presentation. Most people who present their personality is putting the best foot forward. And it's almost always false, you know? And all of us have been there. I thought I was in love so many times. So much have mercy. I know my passion and my love can give you the capacity to mate at that level and create. Every human being you know was created by human beings. So let's stop going to somebody's fake out. You want to look and treat God like God is God, look in the mirror. There's nothing you know about God that didn't come from the mind of a man and a woman. Nothing. It's scary because it's so much more comfortable to give it away to some external esoteric essence that don't have to take responsibility for anything. Somebody defeated us militarily and then decide to tell us who we are and who we are not. And to the degree we don't know who we were, we buy into the who we are not. And everybody takes a piece of our story and make it their story and tell us we have no story.
This one thing, you will understand everything about this reality that we live in called the Matrix, including our governments and the way society functions. And this one thing is summed up in 2 words: victim consciousness. The government and all of the ruling elite need you to believe that you are a victim. Now, you can deep dive down the rabbit hole of your consciousness and contemplation and philosophy and all of the other things and begin to understand this is at the core of all religions and all governments. It's why they removed God from us and made God separate to us, something outside of you, something outside of me. Because if it was outside of us, they could then control how we access it. And if they can control how they access it, aka God, aka through priests, through religions, through the Bibles. Back in the day, you had to speak Latin to be able to even read the Bible, right? It couldn't be printed in English because they were gatekeeping access to God. Why? Because when you understand that you can access God in one place and only one place, and that is within you, through your own heart, through your own portal in here, through your own consciousness, through your own connection, and you begin to understand that there is no separation between you and God, you begin to understand that you are divine. And when you begin to understand that you are divine, you begin to understand that you are not a victim, that nobody can control you, that your rights that constitutions give you are fucking unalienable. They are God-given. They are divine. They are because you are. Their whole system of class, of hierarchy is based on one thing. It's based on you believing and seeing yourself as a victim that needs someone to govern you. You need someone to save you. You need someone to figure it out for you. You need someone to whatever, right? This is the whole fucking welfare state, you guys. If you start to pick at this thread, you will begin to unravel the entire fabric of this quote unquote reality that we live in.
Yeah, Palestinians have every right to defend themselves because historically, all colonized groups had to defend themselves in order to find some sense of freedom. And if the intention is to take people and leverage the people that they've taken, unfortunately, that's what they had to do. I'm sure, and there's plenty of African American stories you can Google and find right now of African Americans that might have captured someone else on a plantation and held them hostage in exchange of trying to free their people. That is the unfortunate circumstance of you trying to occupy a group of people. You cannot control people. There's one group on earth that unfortunately certain bad actors in their community feel that they have the ability to control all the planet and all society when it's freaking impossible to do so. To try to get 8 billion people on earth to go in one direction, you can clearly see that failed during the C-19, what was that called? Parasite that we had to deal with? Yeah, the parasite. Yeah, you can see that didn't work. So there's some people that are so hubris, they really want to control a lot of the planet. And you can keep trying to socially engineer society, but people don't agree on anything universally unless there's commerce involved, unless there's money. If we all want the same burger, we'll all say we want to taste. If we spend our money at McDonald's, we expect our burger in Belgium to taste the same as our burger in Los Angeles. If it's from the same corporation, we expect the same quality of French fries.
All right, you ready?
You can do and you can say anything you want, but everything that you do, make it what you want.
So, but if there's not commercial interest involved, you can't get people to agree on anything universally. So it won't happen. So that's the first example, how I would say African Americans are quite related to that. And I'm sure if you come from a brown country, you had to deal with Europeans in the past, that is the basis of everything.
About what a debate that's going on in the International Criminal Court, though, the International Court of Justice in The Hague. They're seeing a case being brought the first day today by South Africa, of all countries. You probably have, just been in South Africa at Christmas, lovely country, but they maybe have their own problems they need to look at before they worry about anywhere else. But they are claiming that Israel is guilty of genocide in Gaza. Now, you've been out in the Middle East, you're currently in the West Bank, you've been into Gaza with the Israeli Defense Forces. You weren't able to roam freely as an independent reporter yourself. But do you think that those claims of genocide, do you think they have any foundation?
Okay, so it's a 37-second question. Very loaded. So if South Africa is such a terrible place, why was she there on Christmas? On holiday?
Wow.
You know what I mean? Of all the, there's 193 UN member states, there's many more countries unrecognized. Why did she decide to go to such a terribly run place?
Well, it says a lot about her judgment. Either on her judgment of tourist places or just her judgment of how she judges South Africa.
So, let's just address the first part of what she says. She said, South Africa has its own problems to worry about. Yeah. But the interesting thing that she won't talk about is, yes, South Africa has its own problems. But the biggest problem South Africa has is it's the most unequal country in the world. 10% of its white settler population control 80% of the wealth of the country. That is the problem that South Africa is struggling to overcome. That's the problem that leads into things like crime, because crime is always fertile ground, is inequality, and it is the most unequal country in the world. And then she goes, you know, do you believe these are acts of genocide? And Douglas Murray starts shaking his head. Clinton, what do you have to say?
I think, first of all, it just shows the inherent racism in her statement. She said South Africa of all countries. So literally, she just feels, I think, she's like, yeah, these are Africans, these are black people. They should focus on queuing up for bags of rice at some UN camp or whatever. That's what she has in her mind. So I think that a lot of this kind of mentality, we've even seen it on a lot of pro-Israeli people online, where they are bashing on South Africa, has not been against the merits or demerits of the case. They just think to say South Africa should not get involved. So it's just like they've kind of like, they've put themselves on a pedestal where they feel they are higher than, they are slightly out of the range of accountability by black people. So they feel that, say, certain races, certain individuals, certain people, certain countries cannot hold the West accountable. So they are more, it's an issue where you've committed a crime, but you're like, I won't be arrested by a black police officer. So that's the thing, you're not even like denying the crime or whatever, just feel to say, how dare he is, he's a black guy, he should be sweeping my house, not arresting me or holding me accountable. So that's what we...
Very, very strong point. Yeah, because...
Black! Now, in your homes, the pictures of God that you have is what color? Be honest, tell the truth and shame the white man. What color are the pictures on the wall in your homes? White. And what color then is the devil? So if I kill all of you, I have fought the devil, won't I? Is that not, does it make sense? If I am a Christian, and they say onward Christian soldiers, if I am a soldier of Christ, my job is to fight the devil. What does the devil look like? Isn't it black? When you go in a military college, the sabao, when you are learning how to shoot, the target practice is what kind of head? It's a black head. So it is no wonder that black people hate themselves. Because every time you see God, you are not thinking of your sister or your mother or your uncle. You are not thinking of Kiurankuba as looking like God. No. You are thinking that somebody else, not you, looks like God and you look like the devil. And most of the time, if I look like the devil, I am told I'm a devil, then I act like a devil. I don't want to disappoint people. People thinking that, I'm a wonderful person. They've called me a devil. Let me try to live up to the part. That's what psychology says. But I'm here to tell you today, number one, that when God created the world, there were no white people at all. There were no Chinese. There were no Indians. There were no Italians, no Romans, no Germans, no Poles, no Finns, no Swedes, no Goths, no Vandals, no Visigoths, no Vikings. There were only black people. Only black people. They were probably at the time darker than you. So, if you read in a sacred text and it says that you are created in the image of God and in the likeness of God, it means God is what color? Black. And anytime anybody gives you a God who doesn't look like you give him that God back. You say, you know what? Yeah, your God looks okay, but just take him. Because at the dawn of time, there were no other people on earth but us. None. And the most interesting story is that story unfolded around this river that passes it through your district. The Nile. That is where humanity began. To the extent that UNESCO, United Nations Educational Scientific Committee Organization, in volume 2, Chapter 1, it says, as a result of the work of Professor Like and other subsequent work, it leads us to conclude that more than 150,000 years ago, beings morphologically identical with the man of today were living in the area of the Great Lakes, at the foothills of the mountains of the moon, at the source of the Nile, in the land of the gods, and nowhere else. UNESCO, nowhere else. Humanity went through 5 stages. The first stages are known as Australopithecine, black. Where were they living? Where you are living. How old? How long ago? 5.5 million years ago. Who was living in Europe at that time? No one. Who was living in Asia at that time? No one. Who was living in America North? None. America South? None. Bismarck Archipelago? No one. Australia? Tonga? None. Haiti? Fiji? Samoa? Who was living there? No one. Humanity was only here. 3.5 million years ago, Homo habilis. Where was he living? Here. Was he living elsewhere? No. 1.5 million years. Humanity at the stage of Homo erectus, the African that walks upright. Where is he living? Here. He lives here to populate the world. He passes through the Gulf of Eden, avoids Saudi Arabia, crosses into India. And then he goes through Kenya, Mijikenda, Tayari in Australia, and populates all the islands in between. Avoids Israel, avoids Jordan, avoids Syria. He also discovers fire. Then 150,000 years, modern man, known as Homo sapien. Homo sapien. The oldest Homo sapien, the bones discovered in Omo Valley in Ethiopia and Kenya. He started where? Here. Then he moves with his feet and his cows, mobile food, and his language, articulated symbolic language, and his brain, a bigger cranium, and he populates Europe. He is the first person to populate Europe about 40,000 years ago, known as Gromordi. The first people to populate Europe were black people. They were known as Gromordi. First people to populate England were black people. They were known as Bika. First people to populate India were black people. They were known as Dravidians. First people to populate Japan, black people. They were known as Masaba Negroes. Mulembe, Kamaku, Wagasile, they came from here. They populated Japan. That's why Japanese names are like Ugandan names. Takahara, Nakamura, Kato, Toyota, all those, because the first Japanese were black people. In ancient time, the whole world belonged to the black man, the black woman. You are the people that populated the world. You are the people that gave birth to everybody else. And quite significantly, and I am telling you this as a scholar, I have a library of 32,000 books. I have read each one of them, not only read them, but remember them. I have traveled in almost every corner of the world, lectured at the most prestigious universities. I am telling you that in ancient time, the only people who are on earth were you and your ancestors. You. And you are also the people of the scriptures. All scripture, be it the Rig Veda, the Namapali, the Peramperu, the Papyrus of Ani, the Papyrus of Hunefa, the Quran, the Bible, the Book of Zoroaster, the Epic of Gilgamesh, is all.
Hey guys, if you want to watch more clips, click here.
And if you want to watch the full podcast, click right here.